And mother love can be utterly heartbreaking. And yet the mother never gives up on the child. Now, there's a Buddhist prayer that says, it's attributed to the Buddha, saying, let us cherish all creatures as a mother her only child. All creatures as a mother her only child. You take responsibility and you don't give up on your fellow human beings, no matter how rebarbative they may be.
You're sure you haven't had kids, then?
I have.
You sound very accomplished in this realm.
So, yeah, continue. So, yes, we've got, and then we've got another brain, the rational brain, that is peculiar to Homo sapiens, which enables us to create and think and reason and stand back from all this emotion. And some of the worst things happen when this rational, technological thinking brain starts drawing on the 4 Fs. And creating weapons of mass destruction, creating, in the last century, hideous systems of genocide, utterly rationally based, and utterly logical. So, we have a fight on our hands, but yet we all recognize a compassionate person. People flock in tens of thousands to see the Dalai Lama whenever he's in town. Today is Martin Luther King Day. Gandhi, Nelson Mandela. And they remind us of what a human being can be, should be. And it reminds us, too, of what one person can achieve against, you'd think, apparently hopeless odds.
This reminds me of something. This was meant to come later, but you're touching on something really intriguing here, I think. There was a friend of the Buddha's, you tell this story in 12 Steps to a Compassionate Life, who fell into a deep depression. And one day he drove his carriage through a park filled with huge tropical trees. What happens next? You paint the story of trees as refuge, trees as comfort, in the same way that a human being can fill that role.
His wife has died, and he's a king, and he takes to riding aimlessly round the countryside in his chariot with his army. And one time he parks his chariot in a forest filled with wonderful old trees, whose roots are as tall, very roots even, are as tall as a man. And he says, these trees, they're quiet, they're always there. They're a haven in times of trouble. You can shelter under them, you can take refuge, there's a stillness about them. And he said he immediately thought of the Buddha and jumped into his carriage and drove hundreds of miles to the place where the Buddha was. A person who is compassionate in that way is a magnet. People are drawn towards the Buddha. Sometimes virtuous people are rather forbidding pushing you away, or you feel daunted by them. But one of the things when I was writing about the Buddha was how attractive he was. People they knew he was in town, all the young noblemen would leap into their carriages and race out to try and have dinner with him. Mm. But he loved having dinners with people and being with them. But we can all be like the Buddha. That was his message, that anyone who put his regimen into practice could become such a haven in a violent, fraught world.
You have played with the idea of how difficult it is to talk about compassion without sliding into the kumbaya frame of mind. I wonder if we could get into that a little bit, because what you are proposing here is not advocating motherhood and apple pie and all of us sitting around the campfire singing folk songs.
No, it really isn't. Compassion is tough. It requires you day by day to put yourself on the back burner and put another there. It requires you to look into your own heart, as I say, discover your faults, Realize how inadequate you are. Be prepared to change your mind and to alter some of your deepest convictions. As Socrates said, that's the point of dialogue. Not to bludgeon your opponent to accept your point of view, but to open your heart to the other and have some of your received opinions dismantled. And this is hard. And there is, and I believe, I've just, since I've written this book, I believe that we have an instinctive fear of strangers. You see a child sort of drawing back. And of course, that's a survival skill. You need to be a bit wary of strangers. But what the compassion asks is that you make a place for the other in your mind and heart. And that involves risk. We've been talking about Gandhi and Martin Luther King, and there's assassination there. It involves risk. And trust, ability to trust the other. And yet, if you stick with it, people have found that you acquire greater capacities of mind and heart. You exercise new elements in yourself. There's another story about the Buddha shows that he was one day sitting in a grove in contemplation, as you've seen in the statues, peaceful and at one with himself. And a Brahmin priest walks by, and he's never seen anything like it. There's an impression of huge strength and yet control and peace. And he says, "Are you a god, sir?" "No," says the Buddha. "Are you an angel or a spirit?" "No." "Well, what are you?" And the Buddha says, "Well, think of me as somebody who is awake." That he had, by a compassionate lifestyle and a compassionate regimen, activated parts of his humanity that normally lie dormant, so that he was more fulfilled. Compassion makes you more so. Because when we are holding people at bay, we're in a defensive mode. When we see things solely from our own point of view, our viewpoint is limited. And it's frightened. And we're constantly on the defensive. When we let those guards down and make that risk, then we relax more, I think. I think that's the spirit of it all. But, this isn't easy, so hence the 12 steps, step by step. You can't take it on all at once. But it can work. Confucius, when he was asked by his disciples, "Now, Master, which of your teachings runs through all your work? What pulls it all, is the thread that pulls it all together? And which of your teachings can we practice all day and every day?" And Confucius said, "Shu, likening to the self, using your own feelings as a guide to the feelings of others. You want to establish yourself, then seek to establish others. You want to be noticed and be taken seriously, then take other people seriously and notice them. Never treat others as you would not wish to be treated yourself." And notice, I like that phrase, all day and every day. Because we have a phrase, don't we, that we say, "Well, that's my good deed for the day." As though we can now return for the next 23 hours to our usual lives of spite and suspicion and hostility. But all day and every day, never stopping.
There's something intriguing that is a running theme, I think, through the steps, through the book. And it's this idea that when you're engaged with the other, with the stranger, with another person, it's imperative that you at least hold open the possibility of having your mind changed. Yes. And it occurs to me how rare this is in anything, in political debate, often in interviews, in conversations.